latest film from Scott Derrickson, The Gorge, drops on Apple TV Plus this weekend, so let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what did you think about The Gorge? As we go into this, I was able to interview director Scott Derrickson about the film, and I'm going to incorporate segments of that interview into this review of the film, and I think it just kind of informs a little bit about what the film is, what he was going for, and some of the things that I enjoyed about the film. With that said, let's get started with the good. And simply put, one of the things that I enjoyed about the film is that it's an original sci-fi film given a big budget. It's not a sequel, it's not part of an IP, it's not an adaptation of anything. Someone wrote a spec script, an idea that they were excited about, and a studio decided to fund it. And the simple fact that it's an original story doesn't make it good. But in an era where we're not getting a lot of original films like this, given a respectable budget starring multiple movie stars, it's exciting when we get one.
One of the things that, from just seeing the trailer for The Gorge, that made me very excited is that it feels like we don't get enough movies like this out of Hollywood, where it's a spec script given a budget.
That was the other reason I said yes to it. Because, again, I said no at first because it was too unfamiliar, and then I was like, what am I doing? I'm a director, I'm an artist. That's the reason to do something. But it was the fact that here is a very expensive, tentpole level movie that Skydance and Apple were willing to pay for, that's not a sequel, it's not a franchise film, it's not IP, it's just an original story. And you're not trying to build a franchise out of it, it's just an original story. And I thought, we need more of these.
Exactly.
I need to make one.
From there, it's also a movie that merges a bunch of genres together.
My understanding is it started from a spec script from Zach Dean, and it was on the blacklist.
Yep.
What drew you to the project?
So I read it, and at first I said no, because I felt like it had too many genres. What the movie is it's a romantic, science fiction, action, horror, political thriller. That's like 6 genres right there. But then the more I started to think about it, I thought, I think maybe that's the reason I should make it, because no one's done a movie that blends as many genres as this.
Likewise, it's a movie that merges a bunch of genres together. You kind of go into it expecting an action creature feature. One of the images they released early on is of Miles Teller sitting on this gigantic Gatling gun thing, looking over this gorge, holding a sniper rifle, Anya Taylor-Joy firing a sniper rifle. So you go in expecting the creatures and the thrilling, exciting action. But the thing that was really surprising to me is that, at its core, it's a romance.
The trick was, don't lose the romance. Yeah. The romance has to keep going through the other genres. It's the glue that ties them together. Yeah. And that's, right down to things like how they cover each other with their weapons, how they look at each other.
You used the word glue to describe it. That's literally the word that I used in one of my later questions.
And really, that's kind of the glue that holds the movie together. And it blends all of these genres together really seamlessly. Now, frustratingly at times,
when you're watching the movie, you get like 30, 40 minutes and you really buy into their relationship and you're like, that's really working. And then you remember the other genres of the movie. I was like, oh no, oh no, there's something bad's about to happen. And it's not just that in the story, but also it means the genre's about to change. While I was watching it, I was like, why did they decide to release this movie at Valentine's Day? And then you get 5 minutes into the movie, 10 minutes into the movie, you go, there it is.
That's why.
That's right there.
And then 50 minutes later, you're like, oh, I really get it now.
Right. It keeps building it.
And a big part of the reason the movie works is because you buy into the chemistry of the two leads and the romance. That really is what pulls it together, that makes you care about what happens in the back half of the film. And so that goes back to, you just have two solid lead actors in this film. Each of them on their own can be compelling and charismatic, and then they're able to have this interesting chemistry where normally for actors to have chemistry, they're in the same space talking to each other. And what makes this one interesting, the whole building up of their relationship happens across a gorge. And they're both good enough to be able to react, be charming, smile, all the things you need to do to kind of invest you into a relationship that's very unconventional and quite literally separated by a gorge where they cannot speak to one another for a huge chunk of the film, yet you're still excited for that romance. And even kind of to that point, it means that when you get to the point in time in the movie where the two meet each other and actually get to interact, it's that much more satisfying because you're able to like build up all this tension, waiting for them to meet. Finally they do, and therefore you get this big payoff tied to the romance of the story in a way that you don't normally get in a movie like this. And even just kind of structurally, I mentioned it's a bit of a genre blender, and the way the film works is each act is kind of a different genre of sorts. Like, it tonally feels the same from beginning to end, but the beginning of the film has very much this romance vibe to it. That's the thing you're really buying into. And then the middle act of the film is kind of the creature feature and this battle. And then you kind of get into the end of it, and there's more of kind of a conspiracy thought to it, and fight the power and what's really going on here, the mysteries. And the reason that it all kind of works is that at the beginning of it, you're teasing, while we're building up our romance, you're teasing the intrigue, the mystery, the conspiracy, and the creature feature action. And then when you get into acts 2 and 3, you're invested in them. You care about who lives, who dies, because the first act made you care about these two characters and their relationship to one another. And so it's able to have like a bunch of different genres, each act having a different genre, but do it very seamlessly. Other thing I really liked here was the use of music in it. There's a bunch of just solid needle drops, and I kept being like, hey, I dig this song. Hey, that's a lot of fun right there. And just felt like the right song at the right moment in the film.
Okay. Any music in any of my films, I picked it, I found it, I chose the composers, I direct the composers. So because I think that I really think that films are as much sound as picture. Mm-hmm. You know, I elevate the sound design and the music as much as the picture for myself as a viewer. And I think sound just kind of hits you on a more subconscious level.
And just kind of on a pacing level, because it does kind of keep changing up the genre and the dynamics of the film, it moves at a pretty good pace. Because at the beginning, you're like, you know, exploring this world, trying to figure out what's going on, the mystery of the gorge, buying into the romance. And then you get into the part where the action kind of kicks in and the creatures start to show up a little bit more. And so you're moving because of that. And then it's the dynamics keep changing, and there's chases, escapes, shootouts, and kind of building towards our third act of the movie where the dynamics shift once again. And so it doesn't linger on any one dynamic in the film for too long. Just pretty briskly, we're buying into the world and then moving through these different dynamics all throughout the film. So for me, this is a film that I was very excited to check it out. And my wife was interested. Now, she's not interested in most Scott Derrickson movies because he makes a lot of horror movies, and she does not like horror movies at all. And even as I was watching through all of his movies over the last little bit, like she walked in the room while I was watching one of them and started covering her eyes immediately, just freaked out by the sound design and the music in the film. Like, the music's racing. Like, what's going on? This movie's freaking me out. She watched The Gorge, and she was very invested in the film. And though it has creatures and there were parts she wanted to cover her eyes, because it is glued together by the romance, it was able to hook her as someone that doesn't like several of the genres incorporated into this film. And for me, it's a movie that I really, really enjoyed. I didn't love it, but I did really like it. So let's move on to the bad. And really the big thing here is I felt that the romance actually worked quite a bit better than the creature feature and the action. Like the romance, it's this unconventional love story. So that felt fresh and new to me. And because it was so reliant on our two lead actors and their unique skill sets as genuine movie stars that can act and emote, really bought into that. And so once we kind of got into the gorge and the action started, and we started getting answers, it wasn't that I thought that it was bad. I just thought it was a little bit more straightforward and routine. Like, I feel like I've seen that movie before, that people are in a dangerous situation with creatures and they're trying to escape. And, you know, the specific answers to the nature of the gorge I thought were fine. I didn't go, oh, that was so clever, that was awesome. And I didn't go, oh man, that was embarrassing. It was just kind of right there in the middle of like, okay, yeah, that works for the movie that we're watching. But it just kind of, all the stuff at the beginning I felt just was like stronger and elevated the film, where the stuff that from the trailer you would think would be the best stuff, and it was like, that's fine. Like the design of the creatures and the nature of them, and kind of when it gets kind of weird, quirky, and some of the ones are kind of unexpected from what you're thinking is going to happen when you get down there. I was like, okay, I guess that works. That was my reaction to it. Like, I'm entertained because there's people with machine guns and they're running and there's special effects. Like, it's entertaining enough, but it wasn't like interesting and fresh the way that I felt that the love story in that unique context with these unique characters was. And that was kind of interesting to me, that it's a film that I assumed the action, the creatures, the horror, the stuff that Scott Derrickson is a little bit more known for would be the best parts of the film. And instead, that's the stuff was a little bit more boilerplate, and what lifted it up a little bit was the other side to the film that I wasn't expecting going into the film. Be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what did you think about the film? Also, you can check out my full 20-minute long interview with Scott Derrickson. It's like 40% about the gorge, and then it's 60% about the rest of his filmography. So I asked him specific questions about The Exorcism of Emily Rose, about Sinister being scientifically the scariest movie of all time, a little bit of talk about Doctor Strange and Black Phone, and finding kind of those recurring themes throughout his filmography that he keeps going back to, some of which you see in The Gorge and other ones that you see just in his horror films, and really diving into all that. It was a great conversation. He's really easy to talk to and very forthcoming, friendly, energetic. Highly encourage you to check that out, and I do plan on ranking his films next week, so be sure to come back for that if you're a big fan of Scott Derrickson. When you put it all together, I found The Gorge to be a good but not a great movie, and it's a surprising romance, but a little bit perhaps of an underwhelming creature feature action movie. As a whole, because of the two leads, because of the romance, I definitely recommend the film. Overall, it's a B on the entertainment scale, a 7.5 out of 10. And it's a streaming movie, so stream it. It is worth streaming. Support original films that studios are actually giving a budget to. And in particular, if you're in the mood for an unlikely romance, and you want a romance that's still got some action in there, give this one a try. Be sure to check out that interview with Scott Derrickson right over there, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.